Well, I want to thank Janet and Dawn and Leanne for thinking of me, for being a part of HERstory, and I'm very honored to be in the cadre of other women that have been asked to present this semester. So actually, Dawn, you could have stayed up here and just told my story for me. So I'm very pleased to be here and very pleased to welcome all of you, and particularly the students that are taking the time to be here. I appreciate it. They think they're going to get an inside scoop here, I think, so we'll see. So whenever, you're thinking about your personal story, there are the facts that cannot be disputed, such as I was born in Chicago at St. Anne's Hospital, and then there are the remembrances, all right? And remembrances are those stories that you tell from your perspective. And if somebody else that was a part of that was in the room, they might have another side of that story. But fortunately for me, there's not too many other people in the room that have been along on this journey, so my remembrances will be just that if somebody else was here, such as my brothers, they would have another story. So I'd like to start this by reading a favorite of mine by Pedro Rupi, and actually this was given to me by Dr. McDermott, who has been my colleague and companion along the way here and been very significant in my life. So it goes like this: nothing is more practical than finding God. That is, than falling in love. In a quite absolute final way, what you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what will get you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. So hopefully, as I'm sharing my stories here today, you'll see some of that wound throughout my remembrances, let's put it that way. So just to give some facts, I'm the third child in the family. I have two older brothers. My brother Joe was 15 years older than me, and my brother Bob was 13 years older than me. So you can imagine their pleasure or displeasure at having a young female who my father described me as born talking, okay, as a sibling. Because when they were in their, 18 to 20 years and trying to kind of get away with things and having to babysit, I was the very accurate reporter of what went on in my parents' absence. So my mother was 100% Irish, born in Carbondale, Pennsylvania. My father, 100% Italian, born in Carrara, Italy. So you can see I can hardly talk without using my hands. So to just tell you a little bit like what some of my early remembrances were, I would go back to the time where I was about 3 or 4, and I was laying on the couch and had fallen asleep. Now, this was in an era, like let's say a while ago, where when you talk about a Hoover vacuum cleaner, you're talking about a big Hoover vacuum cleaner. And my brothers thought it was very humorous to put the Hoover vacuum cleaner on me and turn it on. So as a 3 or 4-year-old, I'm waking up on the couch to this amazing suction going on and their humor. So part of my conditioning in life was learning how to survive in a male kind of dominated family. My grade school years were at St. Mary of the Woods, right here in Chicago area. I had the Sisters of St. Francis, and I was very close to them. I did a lot of volunteering with my friends. We'd go and help clean and that sort of stuff. And I really consider them to be some of my early spiritual mentors because they were an order that was very engaging. Now, a humorous remembrance from that was that for our 8th grade trip, where everybody else was going to like Washington, D.C., or at least Springfield, we went to the mother house, okay? And the girls stayed in the convent and the boys stayed in the hotel. And so, as girls, we were thinking, what do they have, like radar around the doorway so that when we walk in, they're going to take our measurements, you know? But needless to say, we just had a grade school reunion, and nobody went into the Order of the Sister of St. Francis. So if they thought they had a good strategy, it really didn't work for them too well. So I also went to high school in Evanston. It was called Marywood High School for Girls. And it's now, if you want to know what the building looks like, it is the Civic Center. Now, my very astute reason for choosing to go to that high school, because I could have gone to St. Scholastic or many other all-girls school, was that Marywood had a swimming pool, okay? And my dream was to be on the water ballet team, okay? Well, of course, that dream came to a quick end when I tried out, and when my leg went up, I sank, all right? So the whole reason for going to the school really never quite justified itself. But again there, I had probably 7 or 8 of my friends from grade school that went to high school there. So then when we look at the rest of the high school years, I served as a candy striper at Resurrection Hospital. That was certainly my first entree into serving others. And I found it to be very rewarding to help people feel more comfortable when they were in a hospital situation. So the first real job I had was being a Howard Johnson's girl, okay? And of course there was at that time a protocol for how you dressed and how you carried your tray and whatever. So I worked at Howard Johnson's, and there I met the first love of my life. And we continued to date through high school, and then when I came to Loyola, he followed me, all right? Now, when it came to choosing where I was going to go to college, my father wanted one of us kids to be a physician, and of course I was the one that got closest to it. And so he said, well, maybe, you know, you want to be a doctor. My very astute comment at that time was, oh no, that takes way too much education. If I could tell you the number of years I've been in school since then. So what he did say to me is, okay, if you're doing nursing, it has to be a 4-year program and it needs to be Catholic. Well, I didn't want to go away to school, so that left 2 choices, DePaul and Loyola. I applied one place, and that was Loyola. I knew I wanted nursing. If you asked me how I knew, I couldn't exactly tell you, but that was the one thing I wanted to do, and it was very convenient for me to have one place to go to. Now, coming here was a stretch, okay? I'm coming from an all-girls school. There's no one else from my class coming. My one comfort was that largely I was moving into a female cohort, so it wasn't hard for me to make some friends. The bad news was that the love of my life was here. So I can tell you, by the end of my first semester, I was on probation, okay? As we go back to what you perceive as you are falling in love, that's your priority, okay? And my priority wasn't necessarily doing the studying, it was spending the time with the love of my life, all right? So for those of you are all familiar with having a rough start academically, it was really hard to come off of that and to have a worthwhile GPA by the time I finished. My sophomore year, at the end of my sophomore year, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And by the fall of my junior year, he was dying. So when I was starting what was really some of the most strenuous part of my nursing career, which was med-surg, my father was dying, and he did die that semester. So I felt like I was really behind the 8 ball. And if it was not for the faculty member, Miss Susan Dudas, who loved med-surg, okay, and tutored me through that, I would not have made it. I would have really been a permanent fatality within the School of Nursing. So, you know, it's in retrospect that you really come to appreciate the efforts that people come and how God's plan plays out in your life. And it's always people that will come to the forefront that will seemingly have an answer for you. So now, of course, My father is deceased. I'm at home alone with my mother, so I was very focused on her grieving. And the love of my life was here. So was it any surprise by the fall of my senior year, I was engaged, okay? And I was married following graduation. Now this will give you another perspective of where I was at that time. The main goal that I had for myself was getting a job that paid $15,000 a year, okay? That was it, because I was getting married, okay? I was going to have a family, and so if I worked, it wasn't going to be, you know, like they talked about when I was here at Loyola. Join a specialty nursing organization. Went right over my head, okay? Because I'm going to be married and have a family, which I did get married. And immediately I got a job. I worked at Resurrection for a couple months on a rehab floor, and then I went up to Highland Park and worked in a pre- and post-op surgical floor because we were living up in that area. My husband at that time was in graduate school. I got pregnant with our daughter almost immediately. And so that was also sort of not a real favorable thing because my husband was in school. So I did stay at Highland Park Hospital until he finished, and then he was career military, and so we were stationed out in Edgewood Arsenal, Maryland, and off we went. Now I do have to say that I was at Highland Park 9 months on an evening shift. That was my shift. I'm not a morning person, okay? And so evenings was perfect. And when I came back from having my daughter, I was going to be working part-time evenings. They offered me a job in nursing supervision, which I was shocked at. So again, I think people saw skills and talents that I had that I didn't even see that I had myself. My other claim to fame, why I was here as an undergraduate at Loyola, was I was the military ball queen, okay? And there is proof, if you went into the ROTC office, they do have the photos, you know. Now, when the faculty found that out, there was a rush over to the ROTC office. And the comment was, oh, you were really good looking. So I'm wondering what happened, okay? But anyway, to make a long story short, we went to Edgewood Arsenal, Maryland, and I was now a military wife, not working, so this is how it was supposed to play out. However, things weren't going well in the marriage. And by the time our daughter was 3, we were divorced. So I was coming home, and this was not how life was supposed to go, okay? So I was one angry person, angry at God, angry at my mother, you name it. I mean, I was angry because this is not how life was supposed to be. So, I mean, my daughter wasn't going to a Catholic school. I mean, I'm out of here, all right? Now, if it wasn't for the fact that when I came back to the Chicagoland area, I connected with some of my family members and became particularly engaged with a cousin of mine who had a daughter that was a year younger than my own daughter. So if I did go to work, which I did start doing some private duty up at Highland Park Hospital, and when I went, my daughter would stay overnight at their house or stay overnight at Grandma and Grandpa's or something like that. What I saw was that he had a drinking problem. And to make the long story short again, I was part of getting him into treatment. The night that he went into treatment, I took him and I was part of the initial interview. My very astute statement, as they were saying to him, it's going to be okay, it just appears like you've got a drinking problem. You're just not going to be able to use alcohol again, okay? Another glimpse into where I was. My comment was, you got to be kidding me. That's like telling me I could never have another chocolate bar. And the person said to me, who was interviewing us, who was later to be one of my staff nurses, said, we don't think of it that way. We take it one day at a time. I thought, that's interesting. So because I was instrumental in his going into treatment, I hung around. And they talked about Al-Anon, which is the self-help group for family members. So I said to his wife, I think we're supposed to go to this meeting because we're supposed to help him stay sober. She said, I don't think that's what it's about. She said, I think we're supposed to go for ourselves. I'm like, So what we agreed upon was I would go to one meeting, she would go to another, and we'd get the truth, okay? Well, you know who was wrong, okay? And it became right in my face because when I went to the meeting, they of course asked me to speak, no problem. I talked, and I said, like I was there, because I wanted to find out how to keep my cousin sober, and I will never, ever forget it. A lady down at the end of the table, babushka and all, sticks her head out to me and says, why don't you just butt out? So I thought, oop, I don't think I've got this one right, okay? Now, when I did shut up, what I did see was going around the table was that there were women sitting there who really had problems in their life, okay? They were, I mean, a lot to be angry about, okay? But they could laugh. They knew what they were resentful about. I was just plain angry. I couldn't, if you wanted to ask me what specifically I was resentful about, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I was just blatantly angry. I couldn't laugh. So I thought, you know what? I need what these people have, all right? And I can say to you that that was a pure gift in my life because I came to know God in a whole new way and how to manage life in a whole new way. So coming out of that, of course, my cousin comes out of treatment. He sees an ad in the paper and says, they have an opening at the treatment center. I think you'd be good. I said to him, you got to be kidding me. My family already thinks I'm nuts. What am I going to do there? But he didn't let up, okay. And so I did go to work as a staff nurse, part-time in the evenings. The orientation for that position was that I had to go 3 weeks, full-time days, not in a staff role. I had to hang out with the patients. I had to listen to every lecture. I had to be in small group with them. And I'll tell you, by the end of the 3 weeks, I was in tears because I was used to practicing nursing where you did something to somebody and you got a result and you knew that you were effective. In alcoholism treatment, you could say something to somebody, you didn't know what the impact was going to be, and you didn't know if you had any impact at all. So it was a major transition for me. But once again, my colleagues came to me after a short period of time and said, you know, the head nurse position is open. We thought you'd be good. And I'm like, you know, I'm not going to stay around here. At that time, I was working on my master's in public administration because, once again, being a single mother, I felt like I was going to have to support my daughter. And I thought I needed to go back to school. I never, ever would have considered going back to school if it wasn't for the fact I was a single mom, okay? Because I was fearful of failure. I didn't have a stellar undergraduate performance, so we'll see. I definitely wasn't coming back to Loyola, okay? So I went to Roosevelt. I did okay. I thought, okay, I'm getting this down. But what I realized about 3/4 of the way through the program was, this is preparing me to work for the government. My personality and the government, not good, okay? So I did complete the degree. I was working in addiction, and so they came to me and they said, why don't you apply? And I said, well, I suppose I could use the interviewing experience, but the other 2 women that were applying had like 5 and 10 years experience. So what was the chance that I was going to get it? Well, the last interview, the 3rd round of interviewing, there were 13 people that went in and out of the room, and I started to get suspicious. I thought, they can't be serious. And I called the nursing supervisor, and she said to me, I'm so glad you called because I want to offer you the position. So, a year and a half after the time that I was in the office saying what I did when my cousin was interviewed, that was my office. I was the head nurse. That also was not an easy transition because the staff didn't feel like I was seasoned enough. So you better believe they gave me a run for my money, okay? But I also told them, do what you want, I'm not going away. All right, you're stuck with me. So what happened for that trajectory was that I did move into the head nurse position. Then they became a separate specialty hospital. I became the director of nursing services. But in the late 80s, mid-80s, the money was drying up for alcoholism treatment, and they were starting to change this landscape. So I knew that they were going to be asking me to do things as the director of nursing that was going to de-escalate the nursing role. And I knew I couldn't do it. I had spent too much time building it up. So I went to my boss and I said, you know what? I got to leave this position because otherwise you're going to fire me. You're going to ask me to do stuff. I'm not going to be able to do it. So let's just, bring it right on the table right now. I said, but I don't want to leave Lutheran General because I really liked the institutional values. They had a philosophy of human ecology, whole person care, which I was very appreciative of, and it was very in sync with my own values. So he said, well, there's this new project going on with the Vice President of Church Relations. Why don't you go talk to him and see if maybe, but it's only 3 years. I said, okay. So I went over there and I talked to him. I got the job. And I moved from being the Director of Nursing Services over to this position, which had no title. And it was focused working with 7 Lutheran churches in the community to help them understand their faith community as a health place. Well, I can tell you, once I got my office in place, I'm like thinking to myself, what are you doing? How does this fit with what you were doing? How does this match at all? It took me about 3 months to figure out I was really doing the same thing, only in addiction I was disease focused. Now I was health promotion focused. At the same time, Granger Westberg had come to Lutheran General with this great idea about parish nursing. And it all meshed, okay? And what I saw happening there was that we had 6 nurses at Lutheran General that were piloting the parish nurse role. And Granger Westberg, we called him Johnny Appleseed, was very charismatic. He's going out and talking to everybody about this great new role of parish nursing. Well, people are excited in these churches. They want to know how to get the program going. So they're trying to contact the 6 nurses. The 6 nurses are trying to figure their role out. So I went again to my boss and I said, okay, what do you think about this? What if we take the learning from the 6 nurses and we put it in a format so that we can be the disseminators and we start a resource center? He said, good, do it if you want, but you're not getting any more time. You're going to have to do both jobs. Okay, I'll do both jobs. Well, I can tell you that really all the rest is sort of history because that resource center went from a resource center to a national resource center to an international resource center. All the time that I was in that process, I had finished my master's in public administration. I had really now connected with some of the faculty at Loyola, Dr. McDermott in particular, and I really did want to teach in the School of Nursing. So I had to bite the bullet, okay, and I made my application. It wasn't a strong application. Again, if it wasn't for Dr. McDermott pulling for me with that committee, I don't know whether I would have gotten in, okay? But I did. And I did finish my master's degree, and then I thought, I wonder if I could do the Ph.D. So I started. Well, another date and time, May 24th, 1997. I had met my second husband when I was working in addiction, and he truly was the love of my life. And he brought with him a son who was a month older than my daughter, so it was like having twins, okay, but kids that never knew what a core family was like. So our focus was really on our family. On May 24th, 1997, he was out biking with our son and had a massive coronary and died. So that was a real showstopper, okay. For the first 6 months, I thought if I didn't kill anybody with a car or I didn't get sick myself, I was really doing well. So it really truly was a time where I got to know God's movement in my life all over again. The other piece of it was I had one more course to finish my coursework for my PhD, and somehow I limped through that course, And as Dr. McDermott could tell you, we were working on our second book as well, and I couldn't sit and concentrate more than 10 or 15 minutes. Then I had to get up and move because I could not concentrate. So I had to take a leave from the doctoral program because I couldn't go into now doing my research. I just couldn't. I needed a break. So my son at the time was in the doctoral program in the School of Education at Loyola. And after about a year, he said to me, well, like, when are you going to get back at it? I said, I don't know whether I'm going to finish. I mean, what's the point? I just don't think I've got it in me, because my husband was one of my prime supporters, okay? So my son said to me, well, I guess I'll be done before you. That's all he needed to say. I thought, over my dead body, okay? I started before you, I'm going to finish before you. So I got back into it, and I finished a semester before him, okay? So I can just say that the other, piece is that in 2001, Advocate changed its kind of focus, that it was more going to be a trauma institution. So the sickest people were going to go there. So their interest in keeping the International Parish Nurse Resource Center wasn't there. So I had fair warning that it was going to go, all right? And they did sell it or move it on to the Deaconess Foundation in St. Louis. So it exists today. And I'm still doing collaborative work with them. But I was going to be out of a job, okay? And they did say, why don't you apply for this community health job over here? I'm like, no, that's not, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's not it, okay? So because I was at Advocate for a long time, I had a severance of 9 months, which had benefits associated with it. I did nothing for the first 3 months, but write my dissertation, get up in the morning, go to my office, write, go to the kitchen, get something to eat, meet with my chair. That was it for the first 3 months. I did nothing else. And then it was the piece of looking for a job. Now, the interesting thing was that for those of you in the School of Nursing, you know Dr. Burkhart, and she was working with me at the Resource Center. So she would call me periodically because she's trying to finish her dissertation as well. We were both in the doctoral program. And she's saying, what do you think? Do you think we should start our own consultation firm? I'm like, I don't think so, because the people we'd be consulting for, they wouldn't be paying us. We're talking about working with churches and parish nurses. And well, lo and behold, as graduation came around, my dissertation chair said to me, we have a position in community health at Loyola, if in fact you'd like to teach. So my benefits ran out with Advocate on one day, my benefits started at Loyola on the next. And so I have to say that I'm, truly have come full circle. And even though the Loyola promise of taking ordinary people to live extraordinary lives wasn't in existence when I was here as a student, I can tell you, I'm living an extraordinary life. Because through my profession, I've been able to introduce parish nursing into Australia, Canada, England. So it is, like the Loyola promise does come true when you think of, now, granted, I have to tell you, it took 3 degrees for me to get it, okay? Some people get it right away in their undergraduate. I didn't quite get it in my undergraduate. It took 3 degrees for me to get it. But I would just say to you that it can happen. It's real. It's not just something that the university has to say for itself. So I would just like to kind of extrapolate from my story, kind of 6 sort of pieces that I would pass on. One is that the things that seem to be absolutely the worst life events that could possibly happen to you, looked at from a distance, are gifts, because they will form you into something or somebody that you otherwise would not be. So I have come to call that God's pruning in my life. okay? And I would say to you, at one time I would have told you my first divorce was the absolute worst thing that ever happened to me. I will tell you today, it's a blessing. I never, ever would have been the person I am if that didn't come about. The second thing I would say is pay attention to what people say to you, what they say about you to yourself, about your own personal strengths, and what direction they give you in your life. To take that and reflect on it, put it through your sifter, and see, is it something that maybe I'm not seeing in myself, that somebody else is trying to tell me that I really do have, and I'm not able to accept it myself, because that has been key in my life. Always, somebody else has seen something about myself that I'm surprised when they tell me about it, okay? So pay attention. The third I would say is come to know what is in your way of becoming who you need to be. And I can tell you that for me, oftentimes the biggest obstacle was myself. I would get in the way of me, okay? I'll never forget when I was taking advanced statistics. I would waste more energy saying to myself, you can't do this. Why are you trying? You can't do this, until I got sick and tired of it and said, I've made it this far. If I can do what I've done before, I can do this, all right? So the next piece would be fear. Big player, okay? Big player in my life. Until through the program of Al-Anon, they gave me a new understanding about fear. And that was the acronym FALSE, F, false, E, expectations, A, appearing, R, real, okay? Because think about it. All those fears that we carry with us, they haven't happened most of the time. It's all in our heads. And the more time we spend letting our energy go to that, the more we are depleted as people and then able to really accomplish what it is that God's calling us to do. So take a look at where fear is cropping up in your life, because I think it's part of the human condition. The fourth is do what you believe to be the next right thing, even if it leaves you hanging out on a limb, okay? Like when I left Advocate, I had no clue where I was going, okay? But I had the confidence in my relationship with God that He didn't bring me this far to let me fall off the end of a cliff someplace. And look at the life that I've had here at Loyola. Number 5 would be always live life as if there is a new adventure coming, and that you know in your heart that it will be a good one, okay? Just go forward, go for it. It's going to be the best piece that you could possibly envision. And if it's not, then that means there's something better coming, okay? The 6th would be true to what and who you love or are called to do, and it will form you to what you may need to be for the next step in life. I've always said I grew up with my daughter. If I didn't have her, I would hate to think where I would be today, because I had to be responsible. I had a child, okay? And that responsibility I took very seriously. So I would like to close with another favorite reading of mine, and it's called The Road to Life. At first I saw God as my observer, my judge, keeping track of things I did wrong, so as to know whether I merited heaven or hell when I die. He was out there, sort of like a president. I recognized his picture when I saw it, but I really didn't know him. But later on, when I met Christ, it seemed as though life was rather like a bike ride. But it was a tandem bike, and I noticed that Christ was in the back helping me pedal. I don't know just when it was that he suggested we change places, but life has not been the same since. When I had control, I knew the way. It was rather boring, but it was predictable. It was the shortest distance between 2 points, but when he took the lead, he knew delightful long cuts, up mountains and through rocky places at breakneck speeds. It was all I could do to hang on, even though it looked like madness. He said, "Pedal." I worried and was anxious and asked, "Where are you taking me?" He laughed and didn't answer, and I started to learn to trust. I forgot my boring life and entered into the adventure. And when I'd say, "I'm scared," he'd lean back and touch my hand. He took me to people with gifts that I needed, gifts of healing, acceptance, and joy. They gave me their gifts to take on my journey. My lords, we were off again. He said, "Give the gifts away. They're extra baggage. Too much weight." So I did. To the people we met. And I found, in giving, I received. And still, our burden was light. I did not trust him at first in control of my life. I thought he'd wreck it. But he knows bike secrets, knows how to make it bend to take sharp corners, jumps to clear high rocks, fly to short and scary passages. And I'm learning to shut up and pedal in the strangest places. And I'm beginning to enjoy the view and the cool breeze on my face with my delightful, constant companion, Christ. And when I'm sure I just can't do any more, he just smiles and says, "Pedal." So I think that really sums it up for me. I'm very privileged to be here at Loyola University Chicago, and particularly in the School of Nursing, where I'm still being formed. And that formation comes through the wondrous opportunities, such as companioning students to Lourdes to serve the sick, and just in interacting with all of the students, because every student that I interact with is another opportunity for me to unload gifts that I have and to come to know another future fellow professional. So thank you very much.